Hey, everybody. Hello to the folks from Belgium who just saw part of this presentation. Here's the rest that I promised. And it's going to be even better because it's not only me, Albert, with you, but also,
It's me, Tomas Martínez from Mexico.
yes, and I'm
Greetings.
talking to you now from Miami. So it was wonderful being with you all in Antwerp. What an amazing event. Congrats to Joris and Johan on that event. Great to be with you all. And that was a really fun session. There was just one problem, Tomas. We had this great bunch of people in there and they're really fun and participated in a big way, but I didn't show my slides. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
what we're going to do now
Okay.
instead. You all, if you were there, you saw this slide to start out with. And I challenged you all. I said, listen, guys, put the platform down. You're holding it backwards, meaning you're probably using that pencil end a little bit too much instead of the eraser end. And the Claris platform does a great job of reworking code, not just writing it originally. And the advantages of that are that you don't have to defend so much territory. You don't have the kind of long supply lines that Napoleon had in 1812, marching deep into Russia as the snow fell. So really kind of frightening prediction. I'm not really saying that anyone who's watching this will necessarily die because of their large and sprawling app, but it is true that a coder with a sprawling app is just a little bit like Napoleon marching into Russia. So I'll be speaking about a different way to work, and Tomas will be helping me with this. It's a way in which what you do as a coder is to leverage position, not defend territory. It's a different mindset, especially those of you out there, and I know you're there, who have a lot of code, which means a lot of territory to defend.
Yes. Albert, before you continue, are you a person which does more developing or erasing?
Look, I'm a recovering compulsive coder.
Okay.
So I have coded way too much.
Yes.
And so, in other words, I've got the scars to show for making these mistakes.
Yes.
It's like, do what I say, not what I do. I am trying, Tomas, if I'm in a meeting with Anya and Rosalie, then we're talking about a direction with an app, or if I'm talking with Yakov about our cloud hosting strategy, I now make a big point about trying to do less, finding ways for us to move from a central position without actually expanding territory, and if possible, shrinking the territory. But it's not something I'm always able to do. I have to confess that. So, but it is the direction that I'm going in because it makes sense. It's hard because long-standing habits die hard.
It's true.
So,
Talking about this concept is absolutely useful. And I'm glad that we are talking about this.
yes. And I want to say that in Belgium, I had these wonderful side conversations with Wim de Kort and with Johan Hedman, quite extensive, with Vincenzo Minano about these subjects. Jesse Barnum and I spoke a bit. And if you don't know these men, these are the true geniuses of our platform. They are great coders. They're very good at coding. And so if they did go ahead and code, no one would complain that the code was bad. But the point is, they have all recognized in their own way the importance of beating a strategic retreat at times.
Yes.
And that's what we're speaking about. And so I want to thank you, Tomas, second photo there in the slide, for your help in contributing to the kind of principles that underlie what we're doing today. Thank you very much to Rosalinda, my sister from another mister, to Anya, our brilliant lead developer, and Yakov, who puts together our offerings for our vertical market apps. So thanks to all of you, and I couldn't have done this without you. So, Tomas, there are going to be people out there who wonder, why should I listen to this guy? First of all, if you can trust me, I'm going to tell you, I have your best interests at heart. I care about what you're doing because I have worked with you, or at least I've worked with folks building apps for a very long time, and I've grown to understand a repeating pattern of tendencies, shall we say.
Yes.
A tendency of doing those things that you do very well, but because you do them so well, because maybe you've been doing them for a long time very well, you think that the more the better, and that's not the case. So I've been doing this work for 40 years. I am a Claris Platinum partner at Smallco. I lead a young team today, and I think that's important because my team reinvigorates me. Dare I say, Tomas and me invigorates both of us. Tomas and I share the same birthday.
Yes.
A couple years apart, but it's great to be with young people. And my study has a long view. Fancy way of saying that it's a longitudinal study over many years. We've built 4 vertical market apps. They're all still profitable. The last trip I took, I went to Germany to meet my partner who sells our very first vertical market apps across Europe. and it's still doing well. And that app is long in the tooth. What we've been able to do over that time is to steer strategic change and stay in the saddle, right? We're doing well. And I know most of this because I've seen your work in the Design Masterclass over these many years. Folks, stay tuned to the end for a special offer worth up to $2,500, a freebie we're going to give away for the next Design Masterclass or to consulting at your site. Stay to the end for that. So, Tomas, what will we be talking about here? First of all, as we've said already, you need to understand that your best skill has a shadow side.
Yes.
Next, it's important to understand that you can profit by being wrong in public on purpose. We're smart people, and we tend to like being correct. That is a danger in and of itself. Speak about that just a bit. And to repeat, leveraging position, don't defend territory. Let's talk about how you work now and how I think you should work. And of course, me having an opinion about how you work, that person out there who I haven't met, how dare I? Go back to the first section. I said you can profit by being wrong in public on purpose. I'm practicing what I preach. Who knows? I might be wrong. I don't think I am, but you'll let me know. So I'll give a couple examples of how Claris platform apps have evolved over time, changing by getting smaller in different ways, and how that actually strengthened the app, even though I feared in every single case that by shrinking them, we had weakened them. I was wrong.
Yeah, sure. The most you know your platform, your tools, you get, yes, and you start to go the safe way and don't look around for new ways to do things. But I'm lucky to have you as my friend because you often think about things deeply and found new ways of doing things. So
I'm such a good friend that when you're getting nice and comfy, I make you uncomfortable again.
Yeah.
Glad to do that for you.
Yeah.
Well, listen, let's start our meeting here. Let me start out this Coders Anonymous meeting and saying that, hi, I'm Albert, and I'm a compulsive coder.
Hi, Albert.
Hi, Albert. Tomas, this is a group where we tend to look at those ways that we have been compulsive and find new ways to go forward, and we'll do that together. And I look forward to doing that with you. You know what? I think this could be a whole series. Maybe we'll do this. If y'all like this idea, we'll invite some other CA members,
Yes.
other compulsive coders to join us in a series of videos.
I'm sure there's more than the both of us.
Yes, not just us, for sure. And the point is, look, you can say there is iterative development, right? There is doing something, bit by bit, but there's iterative development. You're doing work and you're moving forward. And as you inch along, perhaps you will fail. Now, the photo you're seeing is an actual SpaceX Starship exploding on April 23rd of this year, 2025. I just want to talk about our attitude towards these moments of failure. Work groups have cultures, and this is an amazing story of two different cultures. Here is the European Space Agency, actual photo of launch control, and there is a custom, a very strong custom, that when an ESA rocket launches, the control room is silent. And it stays silent well into the launch in order not to jinx it. Not every control room looks that way. At SpaceX Mission Control, there is a policy to cheer at every moment, and Tomas, by every moment. So the rocket blasts off and everyone cheers. And you did the first stage separation and everyone cheers. They hit main engine cutoff, MECO, and everyone cheers. Secondary engine cutoff for SECO, and everyone cheers. And then that picture I showed a couple slides back of the rocket heading straight down and exploding, they cheered.
This is
quite a story.
Yes, this is quite a story because you wouldn't expect that. And compared with the image on top, completely different cultures. But
yes,
there's a reason why, right?
Yes. Well, you and I come from the Americas, and of course, we're going to think that we do it better over here. Of course, the point is that when you have a program like SpaceX's Starship, you know there are going to be failures because you're trying big things. And so every time there is any kind of explosion, we actually have a term for it. They call it an unscheduled disassembly. I love that. when they have an unscheduled disassembly of the rocket, at that moment, the telematics that are still coming down to them are multitudinous. They know a lot about what's happening at that moment. They are keen to understand what exactly did happen in that moment. And there are plans to gather information just at that moment more than anything else. How can we do that, right? I start by saying, there's iterative dev and there's iterative dev. There's agile program, and then there's true agility. For me, what that means is that we need to know how to crash rockets. Now, of course, these days at the ESA and at SpaceX, many of these missions are unmanned, which makes it easier to have them fail. They still can be very expensive, but what you want to do is you want to be prepared to have those learnings. So you ask many questions. And there's the famous quote from Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, and that is, the purpose of thinking is so that our thoughts die instead of us.
Such a good quote.
Yes.
I have to remember the unscheduled failure for my work.
So, Tomas, what we try to do often is, at least in discussions with the client, to have some scheduled failures.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
All right? And this is how we do it. It is easy, being smart, to want to ask many questions and have the answer to every question being, oh, yes, how perceptive of you, how brilliant of you. Oh, you're indeed very intelligent. You are correct again. Tomas, Albert, stand a little taller in your seat. Because that's so nice to hear, on purpose, we try to plan for the other outcome. And so we'll do something like this. I was thinking, that maybe what you want to do with this new handing off of custody of this very large delivery, when it goes from your local warehouse onto the truck and that gets delivered out to the site, at each handoff, why don't we create an Apple Wallet ticket that they can pull up and have on their phone and scan? It'll be really easy. And what do you think? Did I get that right? Now, that's exactly what I did with one of our clients recently for a very expensive and high-end asset management solution. And the client said, Albert, very perceptive, very interesting.
Yeah.
No. And the great thing about it is I found in that question the edges of the room. I found out the borders of his domain as it stood at that time. Now, what he did say is that, but you know what? You got me thinking, and there are two other things that I think we can add to our backlog of things to do that have come up to me because of what you just suggested. And of course, the fact that I was wrong, but I got him thinking of other things that we need to code. So it led to more work.
Yeah.
So the best questions cast this kind of vision and then seek confirmation, looking for a yes or a no, and
let me think.
Yes. And we want to invite that.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing in that moment is we are sharing responsibility for solving the problem. Like, we're good. Tomas and Albert, Anya, Rosaline, Yakov, our entire team, we're good. But we don't know everything about the problem. And I know one thing for sure, if I can witness to a mistake I've made over and over again, and that is to own the problem, to take ownership of the problem from the client. Don't do that. I can say with all seriousness to young Albert, reaching back in time,
yes,
don't do that.
Don't do that.
Share ownership of the problem. And so what this does, of course, is in a very explicit way, you're sharing ownership. Now, my advice has not changed from whatever 25 years ago when I was telling people, listen very closely to what your clients say and don't do what they tell you. That's not changed. We're not asking what the color of the button should be or anything like that. But we are asking for them to help us find the edges of the room. So here's what happens to break it down. Who thought that asking questions was something that would require a diagram to understand? But when we do ask these kind of probing questions, we are looking for a yes or a no or a kind of answer. Uh-huh. We're not asking open-ended questions. We're asking a relative binary with some wiggle room, right? So when they answer you in the negative, you found those walls of the room, and you want to make sure that you're always going a little bit outside of those boundaries to see where those walls are. You do find more work to do that way. I can tell you that, right? And so what are the three kinds of sentences? They're in the lower right-hand corner. Look, too often when we're proud of being smart, we like to say declarative sentences. It is this way. And it's even kind of fun to give orders, which is an imperative sentence. Let's go in this direction. That's the moment where you take over ownership of their problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But most important is to use the interrogatives, the actual questions, and to cast them as binaries. And so here's what happened. I told you already, you don't need to guess. It turned up more work. By asking a question of this form, it got a no for an answer, but we ended up doing more work than we needed to. And I think what's important here is that, once again, I'm not asking the client to help us design the UX. I'm not asking them to help us structure the schema. What I'm asking them to understand is that I'm thinking very carefully about something like the chain of custody for their very valuable items. That their concern, their financial concern, is mine, that I care about their business so much that I'm willing to think of a strategy that maybe they don't need right now, but is evidence of the kinds of things we could do. Let's talk about a couple ways to do iterative development. Tomas, will you tell me if you've done any of these in your development? Wider tables, I've done it.
Of course.
Too many fields.
All the time.
You have?
All the time.
You have?
Yeah, because I can.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
That's the whole point. It's so easy to use.
Yeah.
How about, let's add a couple more reports.
For sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah.
And then some really good things that, like, adding two-factor authentication, factoring your layouts by role so you get multiple layouts per role. It makes a lot of sense. Porting desktop layouts to tablet. Let's reskin the UI. And how about this? This one's fun. Making aggregate calcs more performant. These are all wonderful things to do. But essentially, they're all futzing.
Yes.
Futzing is a technical term, meaning we're kind of fiddling in an area where we're good, which means even if our goals are good, and there clearly can be good goals from some of these, that we can become compulsive when we do these things.
Yes. And I find these kind of things in all the software that are surrounding us all the time. You find these kind of problems of errors everywhere.
And it's an easy way to grow. And it's iterative with a growing edge, not a shrinking edge.
Yes.
Okay, so that was one way. Then there's the cowboy way 1.1. Skip black box tests. Forget load testing. Don't bother with multi-user tests in the field. Unstored calcs, they're my favorite. Don't normalize. Repeating fields are fine. Be quiet, Milan. Oh, Yakov, I hear you. Deliver early and then take the next wagon out of Dodge. Okay. What we're speaking of is something quite different. Iterative dev way 0. It's the pirate way. And we do mean literally the pirate way. Tomas and I and the team have talked about this quite a bit. The fact that many great tech starts with an act of piracy. More about that in a second. So what does this mean? Well, number one, profit from alliances, not expansion, which means you can add features by simply, as Wim de Kort would say, choosing from the amazing number of products that are out there today to expand commodity level services in your app and to insert them via integration, via APIs, right? Profit from alliances, not by expanding your territory. Number two, and this can often work with number one, do a strategic retreat where you say, for instance, you know what? Yeah, I built a CRM, but CRM is not really core to what this client does. It's not at the heart of their business. I'm willing to let someone else do that. I'm going to cut out the CRM and I'm going to integrate a Salesforce, and I'll do it with Salesforce instead. Number three, integrate with headless tools. If we're worried that we don't want to kind of invite into the room a potential competitor, why not choose a headless app, which is declaring in its basic design that it does not want to directly interact with your customer. Number four, serve the unapped. And today, folks who don't yet use your app, they may need a lot less of you than the folks who do back office work sitting in front of their screens all day long, managing many things. Often they are important people who need a couple things from an app in their hand, which you can give them, which means you're building a smaller app, you're doing less, and you're helping a person who is more strategic to the success of the company. Is my explanation working, Tomas, for this unapped service?
Yes, I think you're right.
Why do I have build FileMaker headless twice?
Yeah.
That FileMaker itself can be headless. Now, this boggles the mind, but I'll speak about that in just a moment, how strategic this can be. I'm thinking of a story that Salman told me about an advancing Oracle and a retreating FileMaker. Sounds like it's not a fair fight, but it turned out it worked out quite well. And then finally, number six, sell data coherence, not
Not
databases.
databases. I think that many people, when hear you saying all of this, the first time it's like a shock. What are you saying, Albert?
We should have asked them to sit down first.
Yes.
Fall over.
But then when you think about it, it makes sense, especially from the times that we are living, where there's a lot of offering of applications that do all kinds of stuff. And you can connect with these applications and you can target things that there are no solutions over there in the market.
Yes. And Wim puts it this way. Wim DeCourt says that you don't want to be a note taker. You don't want to just go for something, go do this or go do that. You want to be a consultant.
Yes.
Because consultants get paid better. They are not just order followers. What Wim says is that today, if you know the marketplace well enough to choose well among those commodity level tools that are out there, you build trust with your client. And what you want more than anything with a long-term relationship with a client is trust, not billable hours.
Yes.
And of course, it's so easy to say, well, let's just pile up the hours. But that's not always a long-term strategy because everything that you build, you have to support. It's a big boat. Usually pirates did not on purpose choose something the size of the Black Pearl from the movies. Usually they got those because they confiscated it. They liberated it from the ownership of someone else. When they could, they would choose something smaller. And this is truly essential to the pirate way as we can see it moving forward. This ship here is a ship that all by itself created the need for Miami-Dade County, the county that I'm living in now. It had to do with shipwrecks and something called wrecking, which is kind of like a legalized piracy. I won't go into it much now, but I'll say this. That boat right there is like the most kick-ass Batman kind of boat. The guy who built it lived in today's Coconut Grove in Miami. You can see his house now, the Barnacle. You can see his boathouse where he kept that ship. And he would sit on his upstairs porch and watch for wrecks. Just like Batman, he could run down to the boathouse, jump into his sailboat, and be the first to arrive at the shipwreck, which meant he had wrecking rights to that ship. So it was very strategic for him to be small and nimble. All of what I'm saying directly applies to you all out there. I'm not talking only about boats, okay? So let's make this a little bit more immediate. Let's talk about some of the most successful apps out there. Pirate taxi cabs, completely illegal. Uber was when it began. And of course, now it dominates everywhere. It's an important story to understand that when Uber began to go into Rome, it failed because it hit up against the mob. The mafia controlled the taxis in Rome, and they had to retreat and then come back again. But essentially, there's no clear example that Uber was really in this kind of pirate kind of space going up against the mob in Italy. So pirate taxi cabs.
It happened everywhere, and not just in Rome. In many places happened the same thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
Yes.
Interesting. So pirate taxi cabs. How about pirate hotel rooms? It's exactly what Airbnb did with it. It's kind of couch surfing, kind of, blow up bed, extra bed for conferences in San Francisco. Once again, completely outside the law, right? And now an extremely wide-ranging solution across the world. Pirate phone calls. Tomas, I did not know this one. I'm not sure I could really recognize the folks in that picture, but two of them are named Steve.
Yes.
Do you know what their last names are?
One of them is Wozniak, and the other one is Jobs.
Their first product
The very first product that they produced together.
was hacking phones, hacking payphones to get free service. The little blue box. They pirated phone calls. So do we have this issue of moral challenges among tech creators? No, I don't think so. What I believe is the case here, the pattern that we've developed with our design rules is to say that truly great tech is a cultural solvent. It dissolves culture and remakes it. And as it does that, it ends up outside of the current rules.
Yes.
And it requires the creation of new rules.
Of new rules.
Which makes it so exciting, right? And so what is a pirate? Someone who moves just beyond the growing edge of culture. And of course, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So how do you stay nimble and quick and creative and live at that edge? What does it mean for you to do that? Well, let's go back to our photo. and Commodore Monroe's amazing creation. This is such, I don't know if you have any experience sailing. My grandparents taught me to sail, and I've sailed in Biscayne Bay and I've sailed in Long Island, and he rescued folks who got caught in the ice, and he needed to get to them quickly and get them back so they would stay alive. And a crazy, wonderful character. Notice how much data he is collecting with this ship. Can you see the little telltales that he has mounted on each of these sails in double rows? This is allowing him to note the pattern of the wind across the surface of the scale. Truly, he's doing something that is not too different from what SpaceX does with all those telematics inside of the Starship. He was noting the actual shape of the wind as it swept across Biscayne Bay and moved across the sail. So that ship is small, and it allowed him to get out to those ships first. Before he came along, before the ship, there was a single county that encompassed today's Miami. There was no Miami at the time. There was Coconut Grove right by today's Miami, all the way down to Key West. And Key West was the richest city in Florida. In fact, it was the first city to have a massive Cuban population, which makes some sense, right? You go to the old cemeteries there, and they're all the Cuban surnames on the graves. Did you know, Tomas, that Miami was the third city in Florida to have a massive Cuban presence?
No.
Number 2 was Tampa.
Oh.
And that's where the famous Cuban sandwich came from, made by Italians. For Cubans, not by Cubans, but for them to eat while making their cigars. So at that time, there was so much wealth being generated by the wrecking industry that there was a ring of corruption around the wrecking court in Key West. There was so much graft to be had. They're living just at the edge of an expanding culture. All these folks who were shipping their valuables, let's say from New York City, around the Keys to bring them to New Orleans or to Havana, and those shipwrecks could be very valuable. So there was the need for a new layer of graft, a new layer of corruption. And at that moment, that's why the county was split, creating really a new level of wrecking court up here, where I'm speaking to you from now. So this is clearly tech in the form of this amazing ship leading the growth of culture and changing law. This is what Steve Wozniak did with his Blue Box. It's what Airbnb and what Uber have done as well. And if you do it right, you might be doing exactly the same thing. Today, around the world, there are folks getting drunk on holiday weekends and getting their expensive ships caught on sandbanks. And luckily, there's a company that's kind of like a pirate that uses mobile apps. You can request their services on the web to go pull you and your friends off of wherever you've beached your boat, and they'll charge you for it. And afterwards, you'll feel like you've been robbed.
Yeah.
It's that kind of business still happening today at different levels. Okay, now, this is where they kind of have to stick with me, because I'm now talking about how to design apps. Let me bring in a little bit of software. My colleague, a guy I respect a heck of a lot, developed, called Dayback. This guy is from Miami, grew up actually right near me here, and his tool is simply amazing. I'm plugging it here because I'm going to talk a little bit about how great it was to do an integration with Dayback, right? John Sindelar has built this app that was so good that when we did phase 1, this kind of data wrangling of our clients' data into an early prototype of what Dayback might be like and handed it to the client, they were like, how'd you finish so fast? It's great. Good. Let's go on to something else. They thought it was done. It was so good for them that they just thought the process was finished. There's no way that we could have done anything like that without making use of a really good integration, which is what we did by using John Sindelar's Dayback for this. Now, I'm comparing this to my favorite pirate, someone who spent a lot of time very close to here. So here's north, okay, and south. I'm speaking to you right now from somewhere right up above my little cursor. So Black Caesar was here on Elliott Key and Rhodes Key. And his position here was partly because he had access to everything that he needed close by without his having to manage it. He leveraged position and didn't manage the territory or defend it, right? So what he had was the Gulf Stream laden with ship traffic, the same traffic that over 100 years later, Commodore Monroe would make access to with his wrecking business. Great tasty fish, and most people call it mahi. It's tuna out here, turtles and whales that you can eat. Folks hunted the whales here. Manatees back in this area, bonefish, lobster, delicious snapper and yellowtail, and fresh water.
Water.
And the amazing thing about the fresh water is that it came straight up out of the ground of the bay bottom. So much rain fell on South Florida, seeped into the porous ground, and was pushed out in artesian wells that it came up right in the middle of the salt, which meant that Black Caesar's men did not have to land here in a mangrove filled with 14-foot crocodiles to somehow find a river or a spring and bring back the water. They could simply just dunk their barrels over the sides of the ship and come back with really good tasting fresh water. Very strategic. It was the easiest thing that they could source. What I'm telling you all out there, if I have not yet convinced you to go down this road, is that there are options that are that easy for you now. You're going to be able to find solutions that give you the kind of benefit that we saw. It does happen that you can have something where you think it's just your first go at an integration, and your client can be so happy that they think you're done. It also means that when you go on to do the next bit of work, the next integration, they're very happy with that as well because you built trust with them.
Yeah.
So from this rather abstract notion, I now want to go to something techie, but I want you to understand that the core of this is that it's about his position, not about what he has to maintain or update. Okay. Number 6 here, cell data coherence, not databases. And so what are we saying here? That we have an app suite called Upfleet. It manages very valuable heavy equipment assets for construction. And what we do is we integrate tools across the board to be satellites to this core, which we maintain. So now at this point, I want to go back and share a story that Salman shared with me. So he told the story of someone who found out that FileMaker would be replaced with Oracle. Now, that's not great news to hear. What's next? Gee, I'm going to lose this client. And so what happened is, as Oracle was implemented, restricted areas of the company, then more and more, the FileMaker portion of the solution retreated and got smaller and smaller till at the end, he was left with something that looked an awful lot like what we call an ETL, an extract, transform, and load. ETL means you pull down data from a larger system that is harder to work with, where you can't necessarily schedule coding to get done. You pull it down to a more nimble, more supple, easier to work with tool, say FileMaker.
FileMaker.
Yes? And you upload. Tomas, he worked with things like this. It's a sweet spot for FileMaker.
Oh, yes. You have to be aware of this idea that it's so valuable. It's so interesting, this example that you are referring about using the strength of Oracle and use it in your favor, right?
Yeah, this is completely Aikido.
Yes.
This is Aikido in this moment, because you see this Goliath coming at you. And you're kind of David with FileMaker here. What are you going to do against Goliath? Well, you're going to use your strengths in a way that you can, that Goliath can't match. What happened is that over the years, as the Oracle adoption moved forward, more and more of the most critical customizations that needed to happen happened in FileMaker. So you have to imagine this as a kind of a sauce reduction, right? You're cooking up your sauce and you're boiling off the water, and the sauce is becoming more and more concentrated to the point where it's just full of all that flavor, right? And at that moment, you've got literally, pun intended, the secret sauce.
Yes.
As Salman says, when you are in that position with FileMaker, you always have a seat at the table.
Can you repeat
Somehow
that?
you've gone
Can
from managing everything, let's say 100% now, in terms of actual, table count or however you manage it, let's say you've got almost zero data of record in your solution, right? But you are more important than you were when you had all the data of record.
Repeat that sentence, please, because it's so important. You have
Right. So I should define data of record. If you don't speak explicitly about data of record, it means which version of the data in your world are you owning? Where is the most current, up-to-date data of record for a particular transaction? Like, let's say you push out to some mobile app, you push out some data of record from this core, you push something out to a waybill, and then it gets pushed back. You have some fuel tank data and you get pushed back. But here, in this solution, Upfleet maintains most of the data of record and becomes quite important in that respect. The solution I was describing to you first now is that FileMaker itself was left with virtually no data of record, but it was more important than it was when FileMaker maintained all the data of record. It's kind of like an optical illusion. It's kind of this flip that happens. It's quite amazing. So that's one example to give you hope. If something happens to you, like to say, well, you know what? You've been running this ERP thing. We're going with Microsoft Dynamics. Or you've been doing this e-commerce solution. They say, we're going with Shopify. Smile and say, good, that's great. I think it's a good move you're making, okay? What will likely happen at some point, there will be some place where Shopify cannot bend and twist and conform itself to what that company is doing the way your solution could. And frankly, and let me talk to you guys honestly, if you were not already providing some service that was so well fit to the company that they couldn't do without you, maybe you really weren't doing a good job in the first place. Said with all the love in my heart, right? For most of you, if you were managing e-commerce before Shopify, there's still going to be a place for you to do those custom tailored things still inside FileMaker, right? In essence, you think if you were the tailor preparing a groom for his wedding, you can get the socks somewhere else, the underwear, even the dress shirt, cufflinks, but you tailor the suit, right? Because that's the core of what folks will see. So let's show how that works here inside of Upfleet. And Tomas, of course, you're familiar with Upfleet. Interrupt me at any time, because this story is very much at the core of the kinds of lessons that we could learn. So we've had different apps over time to manage site weather, to let folks know what weather is like at the various sites where these construction assets are deployed. Maps. Telematics, rather complex solutions where the Caterpillar excavator or the Komatsu loader or truck is actually communicating data back into the cloud and back into our system as need be. We started out with ERP functions inside of QuickBooks. This was a small company with like 4 or 5 sites. Now they're approaching 20 sites. Wow. Congratulations to our client and to us, because we've allowed them to manage that with almost the same size of back office. So start with QuickBooks. Right now, ERP is managed by Acumatica. And just notice that even in that situation, before we push data to Acumatica, to the ERP, there is a rather thick layer of translation and modification that's very much like the ETL process that I described, talking about Salman's story. And it's the kind of thing that I know John Hedman is doing in his own work as well, where you have this API layer. And because FileMaker is such a flexible tool, there's going to be a lot of translation and reforming that truly happens on your side of the fence, not on the ERP side of the fence. For expensing, this is a great story, and I think there's some real lessons inside of this. First of all, we began to build an expense log inside of FileMaker. It was our suggestion at one point, you know what? It's better to support an API with a mobile app that you can get at a commodity rate. So we chose a tool called Expensify, and the client began to deploy it, and they were happy with the change. They got an improvement in functionality and their ability to manage their expenses. Notice this is something that typically would be done in an ERP as well. But because of how much they were buying things in the field, how much they had pushed out to foremen and to their staff who travel for work, it made sense for them to have a special tool for that. Soon, Expensify fell short. It moved back in-house, Tomas. Maybe you remember this. Yeah. We built it again. Yeah. And the client was happy again.
Yes.
Now, we weren't fooling anybody, but there's a notion of they're happy when you move them into the API, and then they're happy when you move them out of the API is actually the way these things go sometimes. You remember this Volkswagen commercial from a couple years back where these 20-something guys are driving around in their Volkswagen hatchback, and they spot this old chair on a trash pile, and they're like, man, score, we got ourselves a great chair. Let's go pick it up. And they pull over, they open their hatchback, and of course, it's incredibly easy for them to put this big old stinky chair in the back of the Volkswagen. Close the hatch. They're driving down the road, this self-satisfied grins on their faces. And then get pissed. Then they realize the thing stinks. And they go, we need to dump it. They pull over their next trash stop. They open the thing out. They pull the chair out. They get back in. Self-satisfied grins. They've had a great day. They've made some real progress. In essence, that's somehow similar to what we do. We do that kind of thing. Here with the fuel tanks, this is their vendor number two for managing the fuel tanks that are owned by yet a third vendor, right? So they have fuel tanks that they do not own. They are filled by a vendor. There was a vendor one who managed the telematics to manage that. We're now on vendor two. If you're managing this project, let's say you are Anya Stoyanovich, who is a brilliant senior developer, but is also managing work like this. Does she want to go ahead and build telematics like that? No. If they did a very good job the first time with the API design, if they were thinking ahead and thinking carefully about how they abstracted calls in their API, it means that every successive upgrade is easier.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, this, I hope, is putting you in mind of how important it is to leverage position and not territory. We had no desire to dive into translating Spanglish ourselves, but luckily ChatGPT could do that. Spanglish, not Spanish. And it did pretty well with that, right? Right. And what we end up selling is we do not end up selling each of these databases, each of these solutions. What we sell is a single coherent picture of our client's business.
Yes.
Going back to what Wim said, how much better this is to be a consultant rather than a note taker, rather than an order taker. That go do this for me. Look, I remember a time when I, as a FileMaker developer, when I came into my client, I was more like the electrician or the plumber than a consultant. They told me to go do something and I did it. And I got paid, but there was a limit to how helpful I could be for them because I was just taking orders. I wasn't consulting.
Yeah.
So this, on the other hand, is very much like what Wim de Kort has his team at Soliant do. So this is the pirate way. This is the way that we're recommending that you should do stuff. Now, you out there who are watching this, I hope this doesn't sound too difficult. Because, of course, to arrive at something like what I've just shown you, it took a number of years. And you can't just instantly build something like that incredible archipelago of services. But you start somewhere. You start in one place with your first alliance, first time that you've chosen to profit from an alliance and not expansion. Please understand that coding can be futzing. There are plenty of ways to have someone else do the coding, even if it's not a person. Chet,
Yeah.
these may be the questions you're left with. But I bill for my time. Less code will be less money. This is a good question. And if you are too addicted to the idea of selling banks of 1,000 hours, if you haven't toyed with the idea of value billing, if you don't yet have a vertical market app, that's a tough question. But I have you consider that Wim de Kort works for a company that sells time. What he says is that more than anything, Soliant sells trust. Yeah. Okay, number two, your question might be, but if my solution shrinks, it might eventually vanish. I think this is definitely not something you need to worry about unless there was no special in what you have already done.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think I spoke over you. Was that
No. I was thinking about the same thing.
value?
Yeah.
If you're not differentiating yourself with value that is custom, that is bespoke, well, then you can be replaced with commodity tools. But most businesses are not like that. They have some core that's special. And if you've been doing okay as a developer, you've done something that is special and unique that cannot be commodified. Number three, I might invite in a competitor via an API, someone who could come eat my lunch. Remember, that's where you think about doing things that are headless, right? So where do you start? Look, Slack is a great API. I can say that we recently did at the start of an integration for a client of ours that uses our app called JobQ. It manages a digital agency, automobile advertisements. The Slack integration was good and easy and useful for them. We're now doing a workflow integration in Trello that is quite distinct from the kind of workflow that we're already managing inside of JobQ. Ours is where the secret sauce is. Ours is custom and special, and Trello is your basic kind of card system and Kanban. We're not worried about losing clients from that. Try tools like this. They have good APIs. Do not have your first integration. Do start out with something like Slack. You could do worse. You could do worse. Strategic retreat. In our experience, the Pressfile, the app that is sold by my partner in Germany across Europe, there is now no longer a place for FileMaker in this app at all. Now, I haven't spoken about that option yet. The app's still working, still making money. It's still able to support itself as a company. And this is also a possibility. Here is headless tools I spoke about. I'll just say at the bottom, headless dams, Cloudinary, Binder. These are the kind of things people find very often. This is exactly what we did for the folks who were in the cab of the truck, in the cab of the excavator. The checklist tools that allowed the person who was most familiar with this $1 million piece of equipment, with every buzz and rumble and what's that noise? I didn't hear that yesterday. We empowered that person to enter their comments in Spanglish. These are very intelligent and aware operators. And the fact that we can bridge a language barrier as well with this is all the more example of how you can get at data that is out in the field, right next to where the work is getting done, right at the work face, right at the face of where business is getting done, where profits are being made. If you can get data from there, it's priceless, right? So that's not someone who is necessarily using an app an awful lot, but it's something where their information is so important that it makes sense to try to get at it, to listen to these people and hear what they have to say about the operation of the machine. This is like FileMaker humor. I don't know what you call it. Dad humor. This is my slide about build FileMaker headless. It's a little bit like the joke I thought of at the start of this when I said I had to give up my control freak tendencies to allow you to run this recording. Remember I mentioned a joke I was going to tell? It's a knock-knock joke. This is knock-knock.
Who's there?
Control freak.
Control freak who?
Okay, so out of all this, I just have to say that you cannot remain the kind of control freak that I once was, long time ago, when I founded this company, and build like this. I think you can see why. It's tough. How could you do this when you're giving over so much to others? And so this may be even more difficult than the fact that I'm a compulsive coder. If indeed you are a control freak, like I was, and if you ask my daughters, then you might say I still am, you have to find partners you can trust. That was, I think, the best question that I recall. And it was a young lady who worked for Soliant, as I recall. And she said, well, you know what? If I go and recommend an integration, the tool with which I'm building that API, now my reputation is dependent upon the quality of that tool that I select. And I said, yes. And I actually heard Wim in my mind saying to me and to her, yes, which means that it's not like choosing a tool to integrate with is a nothing. It's a thing to evaluate an API, right? To evaluate the quality of the API and the quality of the app, right? Because there are times when APIs documentation are not good. I love, Tomas, how they say now with AI, that when AI tells you something that's incorrect, that they are hallucinating. I just want to say here in front of you now that when I say things that are wrong, I'm not lying. I haven't made a mistake. I'm only hallucinating. You can't hold me responsible for that. It was just a hallucination. But we know sometimes there are API documents that hallucinate. So it's not easy to pick those tools, and you should bill for them. It's not like integrating is something that has no billable time associated with it. It's simply more bang for your buck for the client.
Correct.
I hope you see yourself in the story of Black Caesar here in Miami for our masterclass, the Snow Moon Masterclass, February 1st through 4th. It should be wonderful. Tomas, I hope I can see you here. I think Rosaline will be here as well. And some folks may join remotely, and that's fine. We do a great job of having remote masterclass attendees who still feel part of the process. We've got it down. The Design Masterclass is a wonderful thing. So if you're interested in the possibility of free tuition to this class, then please go ahead and fill out the form that is on screen now, the QR code and the address at the lower right, designmasterclass.co/free-ride. And we'd love to see you there. Tomas, thanks for your help.
It was a pleasure to be here, Albert. As always, it's fun and it's useful. And I've learned a lot, even today.
Even today, me too. I mean, this stuff is never ending. It's curiousness. There's always something more to learn. The one thing that's true is that for me, this process of becoming less compulsive with your coding, integrating is a more interesting job. It's a more interesting job in the old way. And I think it's more fun and definitely better for your client too.
Yeah.
Okay, Tomas, we'll speak soon. Guys, go ahead and let us know if you're interested in the class. We do offer the class on-site for teams. We've done on-site classes in the Silicon Valley. We've done them in New Zealand. We've done them in Norway. And we'd be glad to do an on-site class for you as well. If you hear these kinds of choices that we're putting before you and are still a little bit befuddled as to the first steps to take, give us a call. Let us know. We'd be glad to help. You can visit us at smallco.co. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.